Okay.
This is my story.
This is my story.
This is my story.
This is my story.
Now without the nod.
This is my story.
This is my story.
Yay.
This is my story.
This is my story.
This is my story. Hi, my name is Greg Fitzgerald. I teach a life group here at Antioch. It's the first and third Tuesday of every month. We study the book of Matthew. Otherwise, you may not know me except for looking in the church directory or Google me on the internet. I discovered ACC through my sister. We, as a family, my sisters and I, we all used to attend the same church. And then we kind of got split up. We had been here several times, actually, kept coming for a while. And then we just kind of felt it was just God's impression that this is really where we should be. So then we've been attending ever since. Well, my family that goes here, everybody probably knows my older sister, Jan Miller, and Greg. And so that's my older sister. And then my younger sister is Peggy McNeely. She also attends the third service. And my mother comes occasionally. She's more homebound, so she has a hard time getting out of the house, but she comes as well. And then my oldest son, Adam Fitzgerald, and his wife, Chelsea, and their two kids, Preston and Braden, also come here, and they attend the third service as well. I met my wife. She was actually dating my cousin. They never were actually going together for a long term. They weren't dating anymore. So my aunt called me and said, oh, well, there's this cute girl, nice girl, down there that goes to her church. Would you want to take her out? So I said, well, sure. And so I took her out. We've been dating and ever since. And then we got married in 1984. We've been married for 38 years. I read books all the time. I like biographies. The one book that keeps standing out to me, though, is The Insanity of God. It's the first part of the book actually is quite boring, but the second part of the book is about really biographies of people all over the world recently that are being persecuted for their faith in Christ. And it's just so amazing of how they can persevere. I mean, in severe persecution where they're not being fed, they're in prisons and different things like that, but they never give up. They never give up on their faith. They still stay true to Christ. And it's just kind of convicting, in my own life, really, do I have that much faith? I mean, if I was really persecuted the way that they're being persecuted, would I be able to stand up underneath all that? Wow, that's really convicting. My favorite cartoon probably was Mutt and Jeff. That was in the paper. It was just funny, just comical. It's just a nice cartoon that I always enjoyed reading. I'm not sure. I'd just like to tour the United States. There's so much stuff in the United States that people don't even go see that are such wonderful things here. I'd love to go see the Revolutionary War stuff. We've been to a lot of the Civil War sites. I'd just like to do that, really. I'm not sure other countries and different things like that doesn't necessarily interest me that much. Because there's so much here in Decatur that I haven't even seen. The museums and stuff, the Mueller Museum. All those kind of things. I mean, there's stuff that I haven't even been to here, so there's a lot of stuff to go to. I repeat myself a lot, and that's not because I have dementia. But when I'm making a point of some kind, I will repeat it, and I catch myself doing it. It annoys me, and but I know probably other people it annoys them too. It would be my dad. Yeah, my dad's been gone for 24 years, I think. Yeah, it'd be my dad. I'd like to have dinner with him again. Just talk to him. My prayer life looks, I devote time in the morning for devotions and prayer for kind of the day for family. The typical rote prayers, you kind of do as you like a lot of people do. But then, there's other things, there's needs of people, that you pray for the needs of people, and specific things that are going to be happening during the day, or things that you're thinking about, in the future or whatever. Would you give me guidance like that? But there's breath prayers throughout all the day, the whole day. I've said a breath prayer before I came in here, just to help me, say it in a more conversational way and be able to communicate well, I guess I should say. So yeah, you do it all. I mean, there's never a time when you're not praying in some ways. I am the area director of Catholic Charities. Been there for 25 years. I started out as an elderly guardianship caseworker where we made decisions for elderly adults that couldn't make decisions for themselves any longer. The parents were, or their children were away, they didn't have children, or their children were abusive, or different things like that. So we made decisions for people that had Alzheimer's and dementia. It was a 24-hour-a-day job. You had to make life and death decisions, very stressful. Then I've been doing that actually for the entire 25 years until recently. But then I became a supervisor over for Faith in Action program, the Meals on Wheels program, Matter of Balance program. I mean, we have 16 different programs. I'm very good at making programs work. We meet a need in the community. Obviously, people know about Meals on Wheels because it's a home-delivered meal program, but we also do the Congregate program where we serve people that can drive and they go to a place and we serve them there. But the Faith in Action, the Elderly Guardianship, Elder Care Options, I mean, all those different programs, they're all successful. They meet a direct need in the community. A lot of those programs are not being duplicated in the rest of Macon County, so they're very unique. And some of those programs are only being done in Macon County. And they're not even being done in anywhere else in Macon County. Even in the Meals on Wheels program, we are the only meal program in Central Illinois that does special diets. So we were able to do renal, lactose intolerant, mechanical saw, pureed, you name it, we can probably just about do it. You have to understand the people. It doesn't matter what kind of background they have or sexual orientation or whether they're poor. You have to understand where they're coming from. We cannot be afraid to engage in conversation. When we start becoming afraid to engage in conversation and to engage in the people, then we're really not doing the work of Christ. We're just setting boundaries that we're not going to cross that boundary. And we'll never reach those people. But when we start having conversations and get to know them, then we are able to reach them. But until that time, we will never reach them if we're not engaging in a conversation and knowing who they are. Social service is not for sissies. It's very stressful. And so, when I get home and to go out in the garage, just tinker and mess around with my cars and stuff, I love that. GTO that I bought was probably close to being scrapped. It was kind of that bad. But just to see that transformation, it's just kind of like when people come to Jesus, they're totally transformed. That's kind of what I do to these cars, They're like scrap heaps, and I buy them like a real cheap price and just transform them into something beautiful. It took 12 years to restore a 1966 GTO that was a Concours Gold winner in the GTO Nationals. I didn't build it as a show car, but it scored well enough to be a Concours Gold. I just blown out my mind when I got that award, actually. But now I'm working on a 69 Firebird that I'm resto modding. So it's not going to be a stock vehicle. It's going to be pretty tricked out. Did a lot of custom body work to it. And so it's going to be really nice. It's looking really sharp. I keep thinking about when, I got saved, because we didn't really grow up in the church. We went to church every so often. But when I got into high school, doing the typical teenager, high school stuff, going to parties and different things like that, and just what everybody else does. And so my sister Jan, she was going to church, and she kept saying, "Oh, you need to keep." She was bugging everybody, you need to come to church and all that kind of stuff. Oh, just leave me alone, kind of thing. But is her where I worked out? I was working at White's Auto Body at the time. He was a Christian guy. You need to start coming to church. So there are these two people, my sister and my boss, wanting me to keep coming to church. Like, oh gee, a guy I went to high school with and played basketball with, he was at a Baptist church. So they were coming down doing these cold calls, like they used to do, and inviting people to church and stuff like that. And he come in, he came actually talked to me a couple times. You need to start coming to church, like, oh, there's three people all in a row, all in this time frame. And then there's another time I was at Ace Hardware, and another guy that played on the football team at our high school came up behind me. He was a big guy, and he just picked me up from behind and said, "Oh my gosh, it's so great to be slain in the spirit," and all these other kind of things. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, oh please, I can't stand this any longer." And but then one of the best friends I had as a kid and in school and stuff, he got killed in a car wreck. But I was able to see him before he actually died, and his face was just all swollen up, and just terrible. But it really affected me a lot. I still see his face, and but I started thinking to myself, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life here? This is just, there's got to be more to this than this." And and all these people, just kind of like pounding on me, like, "Oh my gosh, you need to start going to church." So I thought, oh my gosh, well, if I'm going to have to go to church, I'm going to go where my sister went. So I started going where my sister went. And then all of a sudden, the preacher, I was there on Sunday night, I still remember it. He finished his sermon and he said, "Somebody here really needs to hear this message and needs to come down to the altar tonight." Oh my gosh, my heart just pounding out of my chest. And I knew he was talking to me, and I went down and God transformed me there on the spot. It's never been the same. Not many people know this, but I went to Olivet Nazarene University. I graduated from Nazarene Theological Seminary to become a minister. And that just didn't pan out for me. And so I've always had a deep need, not need, but a deep longing to help people. And so the job opportunity came at Catholic Charities. It really was a God thing that I got it, because I went to this interview. I've never had laryngitis that bad before in my whole life. I could not say a single word. But I went to the interview anyway because I didn't want to cancel, so I couldn't say a word. So when I got home, I wrote a 2-page letter to the then area director of everything I wanted to say. And I got the job. And I've been there ever since. But, in my time there, I've helped thousands of people. And it's just been really a blessing. I mean, like I said, it's stressful sometimes, very stressful. But the reward is just phenomenal, because you're helping feed people, you're helping protect people, you're helping make decisions for people that can't make decisions for themselves any longer. You're making people's lives better all the way around. It's just been such a rewarding ministry for me. So when I first got called into the ministry, we were looking around for colleges to go to. And it was kind of late in the year, it's like summer. And so I was trying to really find a way to get into college. So we went up to Olivet Nazarene University, and really things just didn't work out there, for us. And so then, then we went out to Mid-American Nazarene University, which is in Olathe, Kansas, and the doors just flew open. Like, my gosh, they're ready to take us, in the fall. We get all the classes we needed, and all those other kind of things. But my wife and I went back to the hotel, and we just started praying about it and everything, and we just felt a deep impression that this was not where God wanted us to be. And we just felt like, we just need to come back and get some general courses at Richland, and we're going to try it again next year. But even though that door seemed to be open, that was not where God wanted us to be. And the next year we did it all over again, and the doors flew open for Olivet, and we just went up there to Olivet the next year. But it taught me, that not all open doors are God's open doors. And you look through Scripture, that in the temptation of Christ, the devil threw open 3 doors. He never walked through one of them. And you hear people say, "Oh, well, God opened up this door." Well, did God really open up that door? Or was that Satan opening that door? And we need to really pray about those open doors to see whether that's God's open door or whether that's Satan's open door, because he's opening the doors too. You just don't know when you're being used by God sometimes. Sometimes, it really just kind of comes over you. Like this, you feel that impression of the Spirit, within you, and you know that God's really there in that moment. But then there's other times, you just have to be willing to be used by God, and God uses you. I keep telling people in my Bible study that we are the answer to somebody's prayer. And those people were the answer to probably my sister's prayer at that time, or other people's prayer. But we are the answer to somebody's prayer, and those people answered God's prayer. And that's what happened. When I was first a Christian, I could not read enough of His Word. I mean, I was reading His Word, like crazy. But during that time, there was a time when I just felt an oppression that just came over me. It wasn't, I wasn't depressed. It was an oppression. And I just really can't explain it, but it stayed with me for several days. And I just kept praying to God and praying, God, please relieve me from this. I just can't really take this anymore. And then all of a sudden, it's the closest thing I've ever heard an audible voice from God. He just says, "Delight thyself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." It was just like an audible voice. And from that moment, that oppression just left. And God just came there on the scene, and just restored me. That oppression was gone. And I've never forgot that verse, ever. I mean, that verse just came to my mind. Like I said, it's just like an audible voice, but it just came there. And it was just so impressive that God was there. But it was Satan. The oppression was Satan, just trying to, steal me back. But, I held out, prayed and everything. And finally, I held true to God, and He gave me that verse, and that oppression left. We all keep going through phases in our spiritual life. I think, especially as we're going through the book of Matthew, the thing that kind of keeps popping up to me is that He wants all of us. He wants every single bit of us. He don't want just part of this or part of that. He wants us to consecrate our life totally to Him in every way, in every aspect, in every part of our life. Consecrate is just, really devoting yourself totally to a specific subject, which it would be for us as Christians would be to Christ. So we need to submit ourselves to Him in our speech, in our actions, in our downtime, when we're alone, all those kind of things. He wants us to be totally sold out to Him. I doesn't really say that God's faithful, really. I mean, I've told you many stories already, that God's been faithful in every one of those. He protects you, He leads you, He guides you. That consecration piece, as long as you continue to consecrate your life and stuff to Him, He can just continue to guide you. If you just open your mind and your eyes and your life, at the end of every day, you need to step back and look at the day and see where God was at. God is there. But where was He? And sometimes you don't know exactly where He was or how He was using you, but you step back and you look up, oh, yeah, God used me there. God was right there. And God's there all the time. We just have to open up our eyes to let Him show us that. We can all learn from one another. No matter how old or how young or what background you have, we can all learn from one another. And hopefully, my story will be able to help someone else, just like all the stories that I've heard has helped me by listening to them, and their thought-provoking for me, or how they live their life and how God has been faithful to them. It's just an encouraging thing. So hopefully, whatever I am able to share, it may be hopefully a little bit encouraging at least. I don't know. We'll see. No, we really like coming here to ACC. It's been a blessing to be here. I really like to get to know more people, which part of that's my own fault, because I haven't really been that involved yet, but that's something that I'd like to be more involved with once I retire and stuff. So that's something that's on my agenda and really a priority, because you can't be part of a church family and not be involved. You have to belong to a church, and you have to belong to a body, and you have to become involved in a body. Otherwise, you're really not part of the church.